I don't think it's a secret to anybody that this is a low point for the party, at least in recent years, in my memory. It's been a while since Democrats haven't had some control over either one of the branches of Congress or the White House. So, my question to you is what do you want to see the Democratic Party do over the next 5, 10 years to win back not only the trust of the voters, but to start winning some general elections again?
Thank you for saying that. And thank you for saying, in particular, what we do over the next 5, 10 years, because we are right now engaged in a strategic plan thinking through exactly that. Because we can't be thinking election by election. We have to think deeper. We have to think more long term. But for me, that work that we do has to be grounded in a mission. And your mission is ultimately what your message is to people, because your message is just reiterating what your mission is. And to me, it's very simple. It's 3 words: make life better. I think that that is the whole mission of the Democratic Party. It's the reason I'm a Democrat. And frankly, I think it should be our message to voters that everything we are doing is about how we make life better for folks. I think that we must talk about how we make life better for the American worker. To me, that looks like passing the PRO Act. So it's as easy as possible for people to join a union, to advocate and to negotiate for higher wages, for better benefits. I think we need to give people a raise by raising the minimum wage to at least $15. And that not only helps people who aren't making minimum wage currently, but it also raises the floor for everybody else and lifts the ceiling. I think that we need to make life better for, for our young families. That means giving people the ability to buy that home, building more homes in the first place so that there are homes to buy, and also putting people in a position that if you want to start or expand a family, that you can do so because you can afford it, because childcare is manageable and affordable, because you have paid family leave. Doing all of those things measurably, materially makes people's lives better. And I'll make one final point about our seniors. Right now, we see the Republican Party who is doing everything they can to try to rip away Medicare and Medicaid, which helps so many children, millions of people across this country. And by the Congressional Budget Office analysis, that's the nonpartisan folks who review bills, as you all know very well, they're saying at least 14 million people will lose health care under this Republican budget that they're negotiating. And if they have their way with trying to privatize Social Security, you have a lot of seniors, a lot of disabled folks, a lot of young people who are at real risk. And so it doesn't make their life better to rip away these supports that Democrats have worked to build over the modern era. And it's our job to fight back. But we're not just fighting back because we hate Republicans. We're fighting back because the things they're doing would make life worse for people. And our mission, as I said, is to make life better.
I think that Kate made a really salient point about, we want to win elections and we want to win back voters. I want to know how bodily autonomy, how trans rights, how abortion rights, how rights for disabled people fit into all of this. Because I have to say, this kind of, whether you want to call it machinations or manufactured drama aside, David Hogg went on Bill Maher the other day, and I about lost my mind when he said that we need to win back young men who want to get laid, when I feel like there are so many rights of people on the line that we are kind of living at the expense of the young men who want to get laid. Like, for instance, how would one get an abortion if one needed one after being with the young man who needed to be laid? So I think, but I really like, as much as I kind of a little facetious about that, I'm kind of thinking, who is a Democratic voter, or who are the people who could be Democratic voters, and how can you all get them without pandering to kind of like this imaginary, I don't know, like cis white man.
Too, bro.
Yeah, dude, bro, who like leaves us all behind with our rights and like our futures.
I think a part of how we do it is by talking about what Dr. King called the beloved community. And here's what I mean by that. When one person's rights are at risk, when the basic American idea of freedom is at risk, if it's not your rights that are being targeted right now, history is a guide, and it will tell you that your rights will be targeted next. People who want to be in a position where they make all of the decisions for all of us, a small group of people who get to go and make all the decisions of all of us. A part of the way they sort of orient us to that idea is by creating a problem that is not really a problem, that only they can solve, to prove how big and tough they are. When you have a group of people, my dear friend Sarah McBride said something the other day when we were talking. She said, when you have a group of people who want to target the smallest group, in this instance, a lot of attacks against trans folks right now, a small group in terms of population, and particularly a small group in terms of the specific entry point into the conversation, which has been sports, it is because they have no ability to solve the actual problems that exist in your life, but also because they want to pick your pocket. If we can have everybody arguing over here about this thing that's not a real thing, then it allows them to get away with ripping away things that are real fundamental rights. One of those fundamental rights is the right to choose what the hell to do with your own body without people needing to get into a room and debate it. And I say to people who don't understand why this is such a big deal, I really am happy, and I don't mean this tongue in cheek, I'm truly happy that you have never had to wait on the edge of your seat to see if the Supreme Court is going to uphold or rip away something that is fundamental to you. I'm happy that you don't know what that feels like. But I don't want anybody in this country to know what it feels like. I don't want anybody in this country to be waiting for a couple of unelected judges sitting high and mighty to determine whether or not they can live with the freedom that America's really built on. You know, I love the title of your podcast. Um, in part because I think as we've had this conversation about cancel culture, a part of what people are bucking up against, right, is this idea that I should be free to say what I think, that the government should not be trying to dictate what I think. I also think the government should be trying to dictate what you say and what you do, and certainly what you do with your body. And so we're in a position right now where people are rhetorically asking, who are the Democrats willing to throw to the quote unquote altar of electability? And I would just ask them, who should we give up? Who is worth throwing away? I want this coalition to be a coalition that includes everybody. And I mean that genuinely. And this idea that we can make life better for folks, we can make life better for everybody without making anybody's life worse. This country is big enough to do that. And we have to have leaders that remind us of that, not leaders who look for the easy target in their mind to try to pick on and bully people to build themselves up. I think enough of that bullshit.
Think that that is the attitude that you're seeing both within the DNC and then among Democrats that you interact with who are running for office, like you said, in Pennsylvania every 6 months?
I think the best political ad I've seen so far this year is by the new mayor of Omaha, Nebraska. And if you all don't know, Democrats just flipped the mayoral seat in Omaha, Nebraska in a very big upset.
I actually wrote about that on my Patreon if our listeners want to
Oh,
read more about that campaign.
people really should go read it. And I'm sure you talk about it in the piece. But one of the ads was, and I'm forgetting the name of the current Republican mayor, but the Democrat who won basically put out an ad with her like peeking under a bathroom stall, and it says like, she's worried about bathrooms, I'm worried about fixing potholes. And I love that, and I think it was so effective. And I can tell you that at least for the leadership of the DNC, Ken has been very clear. I've been very clear. Our other folks in our leadership team have been very clear. We're not throwing anybody away. We are a party that's about building the biggest coalition, but that doesn't mean we have to have unanimity of thought. We do have to have unanimity of purpose and being focused on making people's lives better, but we don't have to be the same person. And so to your point of, is that what I hear everywhere? No, I hear Democrats who have complicated thoughts on a variety of different issues, who don't agree with me on every single thing. And it is not my desire that they do. I do hope, though, that there is no disagreement that every single person in this country ought to be treated with dignity, decency, and respect. And we can't just verbalize that, but that has to be effectuated in our policy.
Kate, when you, well, actually, no, Malcolm, you mentioned Omaha, and then Kate, you chimed in.
Yes.
Do you want the deepest cut?
Yes.
from my years of
Wait.
abortion reporting was when Heath Mello, a name I will never forget, ran for the mayor of Omaha, Nebraska, very vocally anti-abortion, and Bernie Sanders supported him because we needed to have a big tent on abortion, but nothing else, without this recognition that abortion and bodily autonomy is so integral to economic justice, to the
Yeah.
ability to plan your future. So to hear that's kind of like gone the other way in Omaha, and to hear like how profound that ad is just really encouraging. And I think a sign that, and I would hope that this would be the case from whether it's Bernie Sanders or anybody from the left, that like we're not sacrificing any one thing, like you said, that we are all in this kind of very broad way entitled to all parts of ourselves being treated with dignity and respect.
I was gonna say that ad reminded me a lot of Danica Rome's initial initial run for the Virginia House of Delegates.
My transportation and infrastructure queen.
Yes, because I remember I interviewed her like 4 or 5 times that cycle, and even after she won office, like, you could not get her to stop talking about Route 28. I don't even live in her district. I've never lived in her district. I think I've been in her district a handful of times. I know so much about Route 28 just from talking with her, and her opponent tried to attack her on the basis of her identity, and I thought that was such a great like example for how Democrats can talk about trans rights, because I think there is a reticence to talk about that. We do appreciate your willingness to talk about this with us, because I know that not every Democrat wants to be talking about these issues right now.
To me, it's not really complex or hard. I mean, at its core, there are people who want us to believe that the way we make life better for them and the way that, we make this country great is that we have to sacrifice our neighbors, that we have to look at our neighbors with a caustic, suspicious eye. I think that, to me, this is really simple. If government is not making your life better, they ought to leave you the fuck alone. Just leave you the fuck alone. It's not hard for me.
And of course, this isn't an issue that I think will connect with every voter, but I know that trans people appreciate hearing it. But like, what do you say to those who accuse the Democratic Party of not caring for the average American as much as they maybe should?
I think that that's wrong. I think that certainly with a party that's this big, it is very easy to find some influencer online who says they're a Democrat and then ascribe their views to the broader party. It's very easy to find a politician that makes a vote that you don't like and ascribe that to the full Democratic Party. But what I would say to people is if you want things to change, you also have to allow things to change. I've only been here 110 days, I think I mentioned. And I mentioned how we have Ken Martin, who helped lead the party overhaul and reform efforts. I think my election and David's election is a reflection of a Democratic Party that also recognized we need to elect younger people to serve in leadership of our party. And we elected, a Latina. We elected a Black woman. We elected a young Black gay man, a woman, an older man, a young white guy. We elected, if you look at our party leadership, it reflects the country. And I think a part of what that means is that, like, certainly we're going to reflect some of the debates that people are having. But I do think what we all do every single day is try to move the needle in a direction that makes life better for folks. And I just would make this point that I've been making a lot as well. I do think the Democratic Party is self-reflective. I do think any challenge issue that exists in the party, I promise you, somebody has written an op-ed about it in the New York Times or Washington Post, wherever the hell else. It has been written. The Democrats suck in this way. The Democrats suck in that way. And then you have people who get
I've written a few of them.
that's totally fine. And probably based on what you said, it could totally fair. But I make this point that going on TV by itself or wherever and saying we suck doesn't change anything actually. But in this media environment, I think there is a real incentive to go and crap on Democrats. I mean, I think beyond baseball, I think the American pastime is like crapping on Democrats. And we get involved in it as well when I think we ought to stand up for ourselves. I mean, as we're having this conversation, the US credit rating was just downgraded for the first time in like whatever. And it has barely been discussed. The Democrats, the last 4 years, led the single strongest recovery out of COVID of any country in the world. And people want us to somehow apologize for that. I made this point when I was running for DNC vice chair. I'm not going to spend 4 years apologizing for being a Democrat. Yes, we have our crap, but I am not spending all day engaging in this same sort of iteration of kick down on the Democrats. I don't think it helps us address the real issues we have. And frankly, some of the arguments I think aren't fair.
You mentioned the media and the media environment facing Democrats right now. I am first and foremost a media critic, and I think there's a lot of issues with how politics are being covered these days. Like, how are you, as the Democratic Party, countering this media environment that we're in right now that seems to let Donald Trump off the hook for everything while also bashing
Everything.
Democrats?
What I think part of it is you go everywhere, right? You don't abandon these spaces no matter how unfair I think the coverage is. I mean, I was literally on Fox News yesterday. Mainly, they wanted to talk about the internal Democratic machinations, but I obviously used that opportunity to talk about the fact that in the middle of the night, Republicans are ripping away healthcare to pass on that money to billionaires to try to make sure there's some people who know that. And literally, while I'm sitting here talking to you, I have some incredible fans that are calling me, cunts and other beautiful language. I'm getting the alert here. I get some
Not the reclaimed kind.
no, not the reclaimed kind. I get some beautiful messages, some that I posted on my
It's
social
like our
media.
Instagram comments.
Yeah, you see our Instagram right now.
But anyway, all that to make the point that you go everywhere. That's the first thing. But the second thing is to recognize that like legacy media is not how the voters who we need to reach are necessarily getting their news in the first place. And so we have to go to where they are and communicate in the ways that they want to communicate and reach them in ways that make sense to and for them. And so when I talked about some of the boring things that we're doing on the back end, we are building out the infrastructure and hiring, I think, some top tier talent to help us take our message everywhere. I mean, we are working to ensure that every single day we are arming people with the truth and facts to rebut what Donald Trump is doing. We set up the People's Cabinet to have experts who can respond to the craziness that comes out of this administration with facts. We're doing a daily response now to the press secretary's press briefing. We invested $1 million a month into state parties so that state parties have the resources to do year-round organizing. So when we talk to people, the first conversation we're having is not vote for this candidate, but is to ask them, hey, what can we be doing to make your life better? So that is what I think we need to do as a party. Organize year-round. Take no election for granted. Reach people wherever they are. And yes, engage with the legacy media that I often think is not fair, but also engage with people directly where they are on the platforms that they enjoy.
Malcolm, thank you so much for joining us today.